In March 2020, longstanding MSNBC host Chris Matthews shockingly announced his retirement during an episode of his long-running series Hardball.
Let me start with my headline tonight. I'm retiring. This is the last Hardball on MSNBC, and obviously, this isn't for lack of interest in politics.
But why was his tenure on television abruptly cut short? This is the untold truth of Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews' Hardball departure came on the heels of a bombshell GQ article written by journalist Laura Bassett. In the February 2020 feature, she alleges that in 2017, Matthews inappropriately flirted with me in the makeup room a few times before we went live on his show, making me noticeably uncomfortable on air. Perhaps not coincidentally, Matthews retired shortly after her story was published. Once he made the on-air announcement, the show cut to a commercial break, and Matthews never returned. This wildly dramatic exit marked the end of an era for MSNBC's longest-running series. Matthews, who will likely be replaced by Shepard Smith, Steve Kornacki, or Joy Reid, had hosted the show for more than 20 years.
I helped to remove a man from the airwaves that was really undermining women.
In the feature, Bassett cites a number of alleged incidents involving the TV host, writing that the number of on-air incidents is long, exhausting, and creepy. Bassett's story also alludes to allegations made in a Daily Caller story, a piece that revealed that one producer likened his behavior to that of a teenage boy, alleging that Matthews would rate his female guests on a numerical scale, deciding which guest was the hottest of the week, and would talk about how hot various women in the office were, including herself. As for her own experience, Bassett claims the host would make inappropriate comments towards her shortly before they appeared on air. On one such occasion, Matthews allegedly remarked, "Why haven't I fallen in love with you yet?" He also allegedly told Bassett's makeup artist to keep putting makeup on her, "I'll fall in love with her." On top of that, he reportedly said, "Make sure you wipe this off her face after the show. We don't make her up so some guy at a bar can look at her like this." Bassett first made these claims back in 2017, but initially didn't reveal Matthews' identity because she was afraid the network would retaliate. She also makes a point to write, "I'm pretty sure that behavior doesn't rise to the level of illegal harassment." None of these allegations are all that surprising once you dive into Hardball's past controversies.
I was just shocked that he had been allowed to treat women that way and that the people around him just kind of accepted it.
A year after Matthews picked up the hosting gig, he was investigated by CNBC, which was then the show's network. As Reuters reports, in 1999, an employee told CNBC executives that Matthews made inappropriate jokes and comments about her in front of others. An internal investigation found that the host was at fault, and Reuters reports that Matthews was formally reprimanded and the employee received separation-related compensation. It's unclear what comments got Matthews in trouble, but according to a report in the Daily Caller, this wasn't a one-time thing. The report details sprawling accusations of sexist remarks, inappropriate comments, and verbal abuse. A former producer told the publication, "One host didn't want to be in the same room as him. She wouldn't want to get her makeup done if he was in there too." According to the Daily Caller, that producer also claimed that his remarks made multiple women uncomfortable. The publication goes on to report that two former producers independently referred to incidents that involved screaming at staffers, throwing objects around, and generally demeaning guests and the people who worked for him. According to one former producer, "The screaming is beyond the screaming you've ever heard. You just feel so under attack." Chris Matthews' departure was so unexpected that contributor Steve Kornacki was visibly stunned and didn't quite look prepared to fill the rest of the show's hour-long runtime, though he did step up and managed to finish out the show.
That was a lot to take in just now, I'm sure.
This, combined with the timing of the star's retirement, raised a lot of suspicions. Could Matthews have been fired? He initially framed his retirement as a passing of the torch as he apologized for his past comments.
The younger generations out there are ready to take the reins. We see them in politics, in the media, in fighting for their causes.
He goes on to say, "They're improving the workplace. We're talking here about better standards than we grew up with. Compliments on a woman's appearance that some men, including me, might have once incorrectly thought were okay, were never okay." The host also claimed that,
Well, after conversation with MSNBC, I decided tonight will be my last Hardball.
But sources have a few different takes on what really went down behind the scenes. As CNN reports, Matthews was told by management to step down, said a person with knowledge of the situation who characterized it as a firing that was masked as a retirement announcement. Meanwhile, another source insisted that this was truly a mutual decision. We'll probably never know exactly what happened, but according to the Rep, the show wasn't exactly crushing the ratings. It was only drawing 229,000 viewers in the key demographic of adults aged 25 to 54, which put it behind other similar programs. During his shocking retirement announcement, Chris Matthews apologized for making inappropriate comments, but it certainly wasn't the first time he'd ever had to make a public apology. Days before stepping down, Matthews made a rare public apology for a comment he made while covering the Nevada caucus. As Deadline reports, the host compared Bernie Sanders' win to the Nazi invasion of France.
I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940, and the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, "It's over."
People were understandably outraged, especially since Sanders is Jewish and has been open about the fact that members of his family were killed during the Holocaust. Not long after making that statement, Matthews apologized to Senator Sanders on air.
I'm sorry for comparing anything from that tragic era in which so many suffered, especially the Jewish people, to an electoral result in which you were the well-deserved winner.
Matthews also came under fire for a joke he made during Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign run. In 2018, a video surfaced that featured Matthews during the 2016 Democratic primary, right before he was about to interview Clinton. He remarked,
"Can I have some of the Queen's waters? Precious waters."
Thank you.
Where's that Bill Cosby pill I brought with me?
Matthews subsequently told The Cut, "This was a terrible comment I made in poor taste during the height of the Bill Cosby headlines. I realize that's no excuse. I deeply regret it, and I'm sorry." MSNBC has positioned itself as the left-leaning answer to Fox News, and up until his abrupt retirement, Chris Matthews was right there with them. According to USA Today, the political commentator is indeed a self-admitted liberal, but he's been criticized for losing touch in the wake of Bernie Sanders. During a 2003 episode of Hardball, Matthews said that, "I'm more conservative than people think." And perhaps that has something to do with the company he keeps. In an interview with Multi-Channel News, Matthews revealed his close relationship with Donald Trump, who he claimed was Hardball's most memorable guest.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
Regarding Trump, Matthews said, "I've known the guy for, my God, I was at his wedding. When you're with him in the room and maybe one other person, he's not some big shot yelling and pushing his way around the room. It's different than you'd think." At one point in time, Matthews and Trump evidently shared some sort of friendship. The political commentator even praised his old pal's State of the Union address in February 2020.
I think it was brilliantly confected to reach the sort of center-right audience tonight. It wasn't aimed at the Fox audience crowd at all, not at all.
Nevertheless, Matthews has been consistently critical of Trump and his followers. During a 2019 SiriusXM interview, the TV host said, "This is what I never saw in politics, this religious acceptance of what they know isn't true. All I can tell you is that when we were all growing up as kids and we saw all the evidence that Santa Claus was a myth, we could see all the evidence, but somehow we'd be looking up in the sky for the Santa Claus sleigh to go by because you want to believe." It seems pretty hard to faze Chris Matthews. Even Saturday Night Live didn't get under his skin.
What the hell happened? I want answers!
According to the New York Times, Matthews, for his part, says he loves the Daryl Hammond impression and sometimes catches himself doing Hammond doing Matthews.
Nia, you're on this program all the time. Is that me? Come on, is that me?
Though Matthews clearly has the type of thick skin that's required when you spend decades on cable TV, he was deeply hurt by Jon Stewart. In 2007, the star went on The Daily Show to promote his book, Life's a Campaign: What Politics Has Taught Me About Friendship, Rivalry, Reputation, and Success. He was absolutely eviscerated.
It strikes me as a self-hurt book, if you will.
At one point, Stewart goes so far as to say,
If you live this book,
not true.
your life will be strategy. And if your life is strategy, you'll be unhappy.
As the New York Times points out, not only did Stewart humiliate him, but the interview exposed an essential truth that people, by and large, don't want to hear advice from politicians, a breed that, in many ways, has defined Matthews' value system.
I'm not trashing your book. I'm trashing your philosophy of life.
Is that
Chris Matthews was certainly dedicated to Hardball. In fact, when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in the fall of 2019, he underwent treatment and only missed 2 weeks of work. In an interview with Men's Health, he revealed that he opted for surgery instead of radiation, which he had on October 7th of that year at the National Institutes of Health. He spent Monday through Friday at the hospital, had 3 visits over the following week, and got his catheter removed 8 days later. As for his 2 weeks away from Hardball, he said, "It's a long time if you work in this business. It wasn't one of those things where you had to explore options. I think it's pretty clear that if I hadn't done anything, I'd be facing a 5-year situation." Matthews approached his cancer diagnosis with an astounding sense of practicality, telling Men's Health, "I just thought of it as another deadline to deal with in life. I didn't have any stress. I got up that morning. Kathleen, my wife, drove me over there, went over there with me. It was one of those things in life, like taking the SATs or GREs. It's a thing you have to go through. I didn't see it as frightening. These doctors are good." Ultimately, they managed to fully remove the affected tissue.
As a result, it looks to be smooth sailing from here. I had it out. Clean. It's gone.
More than a decade before Chris Matthews retired, the star may have considered walking away from Hardball altogether, at least according to rumors. In 2008, headlines swirled about Matthews potentially stepping down from MSNBC to launch a Senate campaign. According to a 2008 report from 538, he negotiated with veteran Obama staffers to enlist in his alleged 2010 Pennsylvania Senate campaign. A separate report from Politico claimed, Chris Matthews is dead serious about running for the Senate in Pennsylvania and is shopping for a house in the state. Politico also reported that he was privately discussing quitting MSNBC as proof of his intense interest, according to NBC colleagues, political operatives, and friends. Though it wouldn't be all that shocking for Matthews to jump into politics, other network sources seemed suspicious of his motives. Some insiders believed it was all simply a negotiating ploy to jack up his contract. Of course, he ultimately ended up sticking with MSNBC until his abrupt retirement, and the rumors of Matthews' possible Senate career eventually dissolved entirely. The secret of Chris Matthews' success as a TV journalist might have had something to do with the fact that he wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions. Of course, some critics noted that he would regularly cut off his guests, particularly his female guests.
You know, I'm just really tired of this world. This one is personal for me. It really is.
But you believe he's that kind of person who did that.
Look.
But perhaps this penchant was a strategic move on Matthews' part. At the very least, it sounds like he'd like for us to think so. In an interview with Multi-Channel News, Matthews claimed that he gives it 2 or 3 tries when asking a question that a guest doesn't want to answer. As he puts it, "I always thought my advantage over the Sunday shows is that I can be a little bit more difficult for a guest. When they do the usual avoidance, where they give you words but not an answer, I can say, well, answer the question, and I can try 2 or 3 times. And then after the 3rd time, I'm as limited as everyone else." Matthews went on to say that you can only ask a question about 3 times before people say you're badgering the witness. People always say, keep at them, don't give up, don't stop. Occasionally they say, don't interrupt, but interruption means the person's not answering the question and you're saying, okay, now answer the question. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Nicki Swift videos about your favorite celebs are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.